Hey everyone, it's Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation, back with another video. This week, we're talking cycling and elevation, why you need to get outside, why you need to find hills, and how riding on hills can make you a better, stronger, and faster cyclist. So when people think about hills, usually for most of us, fear strikes us in the heart, right? Like, oh my God, hills, I hate them. There was a period of time in my cycling career where after a tough race, I literally would go around hills, extra miles, just to avoid the hills that I would discover on my route, simply because I'd been beaten down by the hill experience. And it wasn't until I learned to embrace the hills themselves that I started to become better as a cyclist. And when you're out there in a race, or doing a ride with your friends, you don't have a lot of choice. There's a route. That's the route. And really, just because you don't like hills, not a valid enough reason to move around. So I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you need to head to those hills and start getting stronger. Okay. And before I even start with that, just the confidence of looking at that hill and saying, I know I can get over it. I know I can tackle this hill. I'm going to go after it. That huge part of it is just a big psychological advantage. So setting the tone. These tips will help you, but really just looking at that hill and saying, you're not the boss of me. I'm going to take you down. That's the way you want to think about it. So, okay, the first one is cadence. So climbing the hills actually really forces you to become at one with your cadence for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, we have to start using all the gears on our bike. I love riding behind someone and looking at their cassette, and I can tell they only really use 1 or 2 gears. The rest of the cogs in their rear cassette are super shiny. They've been on the trainer for a while. They have not been using the full range of their cassette. And as a result, they've not been using the full range of their body's strength. And so riding at different cadences, whether it's in the small ring or the big ring, forces you to recruit different muscles. It also changes the way that you think about powering your bike, because we get to change the level of torque that we're putting into the pedals. The higher the cadence, the lower the torque, the lower power per RPM. And so as you start climbing hills and have sustained climbs, you've got to get in the cadence and get into a good sort of pattern of how you're going to handle the cadence. And climbing hills forces you to do that. So it feels uncomfortable at first because it's just not something that you normally do. But the sooner you get better at handling cadences and handling choice of cadence, knowing which type of gear you want for which section of the hill you're on, the better you're going to be, because you're going to stop losing those precious seconds and that precious momentum that really slows you down between gear changes or in transitions of the terrain that really hurts you overall. Okay. The second one here is position. So when you're climbing the bike and you're going up what I think is either a steep or sustained climb, typically what will happen is athletes will shift to the back of their saddle. They'll shift back. Their hands will go on top of the bars, right up here on the hoods, not down in the drops. They'll be up top. And typically we sit a lot taller, do a better job of getting air in through our diaphragm. And in that position of being pushed back, we get to change our position of torque a little bit on the pedal, sometimes being able to push a little more forward and down than just down. Sometimes we'll have an opportunity to kind of work on the way that we're pedaling in terms of like pushing down, but also pulling up, turning better circles at those lower RPMs. You get a nice combination thereof. But that climbing position actually is a nuance and is a comfortable space. So as you climb hills, you have to get better at adapting your position to the terrain you're on to not only stay comfortable, but to also be able to continue applying pressure to those pedals. So getting comfortable in that climbing position will actually make you a stronger cyclist. It gives you a new position that you can take on when you're on the flats or in other terrain. Now all of a sudden you've got sort of diversity of options from a position perspective. Okay. Number 3 here is relaxation under stress. And this is super important. So when you're grinding up a hill or you're out of gears, you're clicking and it's not going, it's like, not happening. And you're like, oh boy, what do I do? You're going to have to work. And that's typically when cyclists get tense, right? The hands grip the bars. You can see it up on the shoulders. The shoulders are super high. They're using every fiber of their muscle to help their quads and their glutes push that bike. And what ends up happening is that it's just a lot of wasted energy. And when you look at someone who's putting out twice as many watts as you in the Giro or the Tour de France or professional level cyclists, men and women alike, they make it look easy. And a huge part of that easiness that you see when you look at their body is relaxation. So professional athletes or elite athletes are able to do phenomenal amounts of work, but to still be relaxed while they're doing that work. It's in a mirage. You can't really tell how hard they're working because it doesn't look like it's that hard. And similarly speaking, you too need to find a space inside the work of climbing that is still relaxed for you. So when you've got that tension and that load on and you're like, okay, I'm riding so hard up this hill right now. Well, which part can you relax? Can you drop those shoulders? Can you change your breathing? Can you stretch out your back a little bit, right? Can we shift in the saddle? How are we going to find space inside that strain to be comfortable, to make room in there, right? We're transitioning from that flat, I'm going fast and I'm getting this big return on my work, to this climbing section where the capacity for return has shrunk dramatically, giving us that kind of claustrophobic feeling. So getting comfortable inside this tighter space is really important. And it's a key concept to you becoming better at handling extreme amounts of stress in other places when you'll ride, which are like sprint finishes or other climbs or places during the bike ride where excessive power is actually to your advantage. Learning how to climb in that situation is an opportunity to do that a little bit in slow motion, so you get better at recognizing the enemy that is pain, and you can wrestle with it a bit and kind of come to terms with it right on your own, which I think is really important. Okay, number 4, getting into a good standing rhythm. And this is huge. As a triathlete, I ride with a lot of triathletes, and one of my biggest pet peeves is riding with triathletes who decide to stand up. Because the minute they stand up, their bike comes backwards right into your front wheel unless you're super careful. And that's because triathletes don't have a good sense of what it means to keep tension on the pedals, even when they're transitioning from seating to standing. As a result, that bike starts to jerk back. And you can tell the difference between someone who can climb smoothly or someone who's climbing quickly and someone who's climbing with rhythm. Right? If you think about it from the dance floor, you know what rhythm is on the dance floor. Climbing your bike is also very similar. If you've watched some of those pro cyclists ride, men and women alike, when they climb, that bike is just rocking underneath them and they're just moving up that hill. It's one fluid motion and they're going, versus what I believe most of us look like, which is grabbing those bars as tight as we can and just jerking from side to side, and just praying that every ounce of energy we have is going into the pedal, into the drivetrain, into the wheels, into the road, and getting us over the top of this really grueling hill. So climbing actually forces you to develop a rhythm outside of the saddle, which I think is really important. We all have a cadence that we're familiar with seating, but are you familiar with your standing cadence? And that becomes an asset for you just even down the road, again, launching into a sprint, picking up some momentum over the top of a hill, or just giving your back a break for a little bit and standing for 10, 20 minutes. The more comfortable you get at standing, the better off you can be. Power user tip here, definitely want to get your shoulders over the tops of the bars, right? So you're kind of looking down on top of your hands. If you're standing, but your hands are still out in front of you, you can do a lot of work there with the core muscles that are just going to really fatigue super early. So get up over the front of those bars with your shoulders, stand tall on that bike, and develop that new standing rhythm. And then finally, the 5th point here, one of the main reasons we want to work on climbing is the descending. Now, one of the reasons people don't like to climb so much is because they do have to go down the other side. But becoming comfortable with descending, especially if you're fortunate enough to be in a group ride, is a superpower user skill. Because if you can handle your bike going fast down a descent, then you can handle your bike on the flats at half the speed. And bike handling is in and of itself a critical skill, whether you're off-road, you're road racing, you're just racing for fun or riding for fun, or if you're a triathlete doing competitive racing as well, bike handling skills matter. And descending is a great place to learn because we don't have to worry so much about the braking side of things or the shifting side of things. We're mostly just kind of coasting. And as a result, it's all about weight distribution, management, picking your line, things that we need to be doing when we're on the flats, when we're transitioning from a slight downhill to a flat or from a flat to a slight uphill, picking our line, how do we want to handle it? Descending gives you a chance to do that for 4 or 5 minutes straight, kind of jam pack all of those decisions and all of that learning into a really compressed, focused time frame, which is a place where we can really advance your understanding of bike handling skills. For most people, learning how to descend downhill starts by riding downhill with someone else, following their line and learning their body language. So definitely pick someone who you think is a good descender, or ask around and find someone is, and do your best to kind of stick safely behind them at a safe distance so you can manage it and learn the skills of descending, because it will pay massive dividends. So when you're thinking about your training and you say, oh my God, here comes another hill, I'm out. Oh no, turn right around. We're going straight up that hill. We're going to deal with what we can with the gears that we have on our bike. We're going to work on our cadence. We're going to work on our positioning. We're going to find comfort inside the stress. We're going to find a place where we can kind of come to terms with the work that we're able to do. We're going to get into a nice standing climbing rhythm and break it up. 20 steps, 20 pedal strokes standing, maybe 30 pedal strokes sitting. Find that rhythm that works for you on this hill. And then finally, enjoy the rewards on the descent. Focus on those bike handling skills, catch your breath, zip up that jersey again, get back to work, and be ready for that next hill. Thanks for tuning in. I'm always back here with other tips for you. Until then, enjoy your cycling, challenge those hills, be healthy, be safe. I'll see you guys.